Zoom. We are going to be recording, so we are recording data sets, so we'll be able to send that out later. Second, if you'd like to I'd like to point out a couple of features other than the panelists. Everyone is muted. There is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen where you can submit questions throughout the presentation, and we'll be able to bring those back during the Q&A during the session. Okay, so on to the fun stuff. Today you'll hear all about the South River Forest vision and how to get involved from Ryan Gravel, Shannon Lee, and Darren Davis. Our presentation will take about 30 minutes, and then we'll answer your questions. So please do remember to just toss those into the Q&A as you come up with them. And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Ryan to speak to us about the vision of the South River Forest and current threats to that vision.
Hi there, thanks for the introduction. My name is Ryan Gravel, and I'm going to share with you today the vision for the South River Forest. Let me share my screen. Great, I hope you can see that. The South River Forest is truly a very big idea. Just for a little orientation, it flows 2/3 of the region, of the metro region, drains into the Chattahoochee River and out to the Gulf of Mexico. But the southeast and eastern parts of the region drain into the South River, which flows into the Okmulgee, which flows into the Altamaha River and out at the coast near Sea Island and Darien. It's an incredible watershed. Atlanta sits high on the subcontinental divide, and this side of the region flows to the Atlantic Ocean. You can see in the inset map the scale of the space that we're talking about. It's larger than Stone Mountain Park, but inside 285. Oops. I first started looking at the South River when I was working on the Atlanta city design. This is a big idea, a big plan for a vision for the future of the city. How do we design change so that as the city more than doubles its population, in the face of regional growth of 2.5 million people over the next 20 years, how do we make sure that we grow into the best version of ourselves? And of course, a big part of Atlanta's identity is in the tree canopy. And one of our greatest needs looking ahead at all that population growth is a preservation of green spaces. And so the South River Forest really elevated itself in multiple ways as a priority for the city's future. The city design was adopted by the Atlanta City Council into the city charter, which makes it pretty fundamental to the city's idea of itself. Simultaneously, the Nature Conservancy had been working in the South River Okmulgee Altamaha watershed for a long, long time, mostly outside the metro area, but they started looking at how they might be involved in the city, in urban areas, conservation in urban areas. As you probably know, there's been a lot of attention to the Chattahoochee River and Proctor Creek and things like that, but not much to the South River. And so they decided to look more closely at this area. And you can see how this sort of heat map of development illustrates how there's still quite a bit of tree cover and undeveloped land in this little corner of Southeast Atlanta and unincorporated Southwest DeKalb County. It's not protected though, mostly not protected. And so it is at risk of development. When you find the South River, if you can see why it's been forgotten. It's nearly invisible, the way that the city has grown up around it. This is the historic sort of map of the area. Weelaunee, we believe, might be the native Muskogee name for the South River. Soapstone Ridge is a geological ridge line with rock outcroppings of soapstone that you'll see in a minute. As the city grew around the end of the 1800s, early 20th century, the area was home to the prison and the prison farm, which was for low-risk inmates to work their time. Brick companies, railroads, kind of industrial flavor. As the city grew with suburbanization, it kind of bypassed this area and filled it with correctional facilities, industrial truck storage, um, landfills, and those kinds of things that were less desirable in people's neighborhoods. And the area, while there our communities here, they were burdened and saddled with these negative things as this dumping ground for generations. The turning point really began in the 90s when the South River Watershed Alliance and community groups elevated the impact of the leaching from some of the landfills and some of the other pollution and environmental degradation in the South River watershed. And through the force of EPA and other partners, the city and county had to start doing something. At that time, several of the existing parks like Constitution Lakes and Trenton Creek Park and Southside Park were all created. And since then, since it's been a little cleaned up, people's begun sort of exploring and emerging in this area. And so it's been interesting it's a good time to start rethinking this incredible landscape. Meanwhile, of course, the growth of the city continues, and obviously one of the impetuses behind the city design was to protect the city's interests from growth. While this may not be the front line of gentrification just yet, it's close. Growth pressures are coming south from East Atlanta and Grant Park, especially. We also looked at a lot of other watersheds in the region, a lot of reinventing and creating new access to other waterways in the region. And of course, nationally and globally, there's been a great number of incredible transformation projects for degraded urban watersheds around the world. And then a park this size, I mean, you're talking 3,500 acres, larger than Stone Mountain Park, but inside 285. It's an incredible landscape that would allow lots of things to happen. So we've been trying to not master plan what this is, but come up with ideas that inspire people to rethink what this landscape could become. So I've been working since 2017 with the Nature Conservancy. When we wrapped up the city design, started working with the Nature Conservancy on fleshing out this vision. We've been imagining what that looks like, articulating the specifics of the landscape strategies, how we would get this vision come to life, and just do a lot of imagining and community work, talking with different communities and trying to form a network of shared interests. This is the landscape, so it goes as far west as Jonesboro Road and Southside Park. You may be familiar with the mountain bike trails at Southside Park and the ball fields, pretty popular. Moreland Avenue goes right through the center of this. So you might be familiar with the Starlight Drive-In, for example, which is here. And then the eastern edge is Boulder Crest. And it's a loose term. Some of these parks connect to other parks, and it's a large landscape, but this is generally the area that we've been talking about. You can see the dark green is publicly owned land. So that is public parks like Southside Park here, Constitution Lakes, and Entrenchment Creek Park. It is also a couple of water reclamation facilities. This one is actually decommissioned. It includes Lake Charlotte, which is a new 220-acre tract of forest that was recently acquired by the city. It's not open yet, but it will be a nature preserve. And then importantly, this one, we'll get back to this, but this is the old Atlanta prison farm. This again, where low risk inmates could go work the land. It was related to the federal penitentiary. It's been owned by the city, but it's outside the city limits, and it hasn't been used as a farm for several decades. So it's all overgrown and back into a forest. Slightly lighter green is the landfill, so not really at risk of development. And we've been looking at models for how you convert a landfill into a park. The second to lightest green is private land that's predominantly forested, undeveloped. And then the lightest green is developed land, like truck yards and stuff, which, isn't forested, but man, it's right along the river. All those oils and grease from the trucks drain directly into the river. And because they're already flat and deforested, they could be used for ball fields and constructed wetlands and other kinds of things that need to be built. From an ecological value, obviously this is a very high level concept of ecology, but it's, what areas are forested, which areas are deforested, where are the high points and low points, landfills, those kinds of things. You can get a sense for that. Obviously with both the South River and its tributary in Trenchant Creek, this landscape is kind of organized around that. And of course, naturally, the low-lying areas are along the river, which are prone to flooding. So this is kind of the vision. You've got South River Gardens in the west, Boulder Crest in the east, and the Value Village Shopping Center, which has been proposed for redevelopment in the north, all along Moreland Avenue. Again, this is a big vision. 2/3 of this is, not really at risk of being developed, but 1/3 is not at risk, 2/3 is. And so, we're early in the stages of getting something like this off the ground. And that's the idea. Surrounding this vision, of course, are a lot of communities. And part of the city design and the intention behind the South River Forest in this work with the Nature Conservancy is to make sure that we're not just talking about the park, but we're also talking about the impact on the communities, both in terms of environmental, tree canopy, watershed, all of that, but also for impacts on cost of housing, creation of economic opportunity, that the people who are here should be part of this vision. And so not only are we including that in the way that we're thinking, but we're also connecting with people in communities and beginning a process of a much larger process down the road of what that should look like and be. So we've been conceptualizing it. We've been sharing this idea. We've been strategizing about the different parts. This is not something that is fully baked. It is early in the process. That's why we're talking with you all and sharing this vision and trying to get to the next level. So we'll continue to do that. It is beautiful though. I wanted to show you some pictures. This is, you don't have to wait to enjoy the South River Forest. You can go there now. This is in Trenchant Creek Park. That's in Trenchant Creek on the right. Here's another view. Beautiful floodplain, wetland, not wetland, floodplains with that you can go on beautiful hikes through. Very underutilized park. You can really escape from other people and get out in nature. It's quite nice. This is Southside Park. I mentioned the mountain bike trails, very well known regionally for its mountain bike trails, but also has, you can hike those trails too. You can go out into the woods. These are the soapstone boulders that are at the crests of some of these hilltops. Constitution Lake, so if you haven't been there, you've got to go. This is not a natural lake. This was a brick company, and the lakes are formed from the pits where they dug up the clay to make bricks. But it attracts a lot of waterfowl, a lot of birders always there, fisher folks fishing out there, and it's just quite beautiful. It also has this folk art trail called the Doll's Head Trail. If you haven't been there, it's worth a little tour. This is one of the lesser known lakes, Constitution Lakes. Then there's landfills, again, not really at risk of being developed, and a different kind of concept for what a park might be. And of course, we don't know yet how we might use them because they're all closed, but they're obviously still doing their thing. So it might be a while before we actually get to use them, but we want to incorporate them as part of the vision. Importantly, between these landfills, there's a mountain stream. It could be in North Georgia somewhere. It's quite beautiful. This is in Trenchant Creek, literally between two of the Donzie landfills. Lake Charlotte, I mentioned, is a 220-acre, high-quality, beautiful forest. It was the largest tract of privately owned forest in the city until it was purchased by the city late last year. It's not open yet, but it will be open, so it can go through its own planning process for access and security, and then it's going to open hopefully very soon. It has these soapstone boulders too, and the native people reportedly carved soapstone bowls out of them, and you can still see some of the remnants of those bowls. This is the bottom of the lake. So the Lake of Lake Charlotte doesn't exist anymore. This is it. It's a beautiful wetland meadow. But we do have some major threats, and I want to just spend a couple minutes on that. One is the prison farm, which is the city's, it's city-owned land, 348 acres of city-owned land, but it's outside the city limits, which means that it and the surrounding communities are not represented in City Hall. They can't vote for city council or for mayor. They are nobody. They're not. The use of this property is not accountable to them in any way. They don't have any say in what happens. It's always been envisioned as a green space for 25 years now. And that's been the expectation. Of course, it was the primary inspiration for the South River Park in the Atlanta city design. But just a couple months ago, the Atlanta Police Foundation announced that they were going to build a public safety training facility here. There had been no community input about that. Nobody even saw that coming, but it was just announced in the newspaper. And so definitely a threat to the vision. You can see how important the prison farm is to the entire landscape. It is the primary centerpiece connecting tract of land. It also is a high quality green space, and we need it for not just its physical connectivity for people and trails and things, but also for nature, wildlife, habitat, reducing urban heat island effect, all of the things that's its best and highest use. We're convinced. The second is the Crown and Fortune sites, which are privately owned mostly forested land. I'll show you a couple of pictures of that. And same thing with 3 that on here, the Forest Connector. You can see how it connects Southside Park with Lake Charlotte. It's about 45 acres. It is privately owned, a beautiful forest that we'd like to, it's a priority, and it's threatened by a new subdivision. Fortune is threatened by movie studios. This is the Honor Farm. These are farm ponds. The land is terraced. You can see how it was once farmland, but it's all reforested now. These are old farm ponds. There's 2 of them. This is down in the floodplain where along Intrenchment Creek. And then this is Intrenchment Creek itself. On the other side is literally Intrenchment Creek Park. So you can see how seamless this landscape really is, how it operates today. We just want to protect it to continue to work like that. The Fortune site is on the left. Here on the right is actually part of the Constitution Lakes property. It's not accessible to the public, but it is part of the county property. To the left is a nearly 200-acre privately owned forest, like Lake Charlotte, rolling topography, beautiful forest, hilltops with rock outcroppings, soapstone ridge. That was South River. That is the South River just before it flows under 285. Fortune, Lake Charlotte, all these properties have shagbark hickory, which is a rare species to find in this far south and in this part of metro area, in an urban area. This is the forest connector that connects Southside Park to Lake Charlotte. Again, threatened by subdivision. It also has some farm ponds and other things. It was once a farm, but now reforested for the last 40 years, 50 years probably. So, anyway, thanks for listening. That's my work I've been doing with the Nature Conservancy on the South River Forest. So I know there's a lot of discussion, so I'll turn it back to the moderator. Thank you.
And thanks, Ryan. I get super excited every single time I hear more things about the South River and the South River Forest Project. And so to hear a little bit more about how people can get involved and help out, here's Shannon Lee with the South River Forest Coalition.
Hi, everyone. As Ryan mentioned, Constitution Lakes is just down the street. So this lovely picture behind me is just down the road from us. And if you haven't been there, I really encourage you to go check it out. It's pretty awesome. I live in Eastland Heights, right near Boulder Crest in Eastland. I've been in this area of the neighborhood for about 23 years, but I am a lifelong resident of 30316. I grew up in Cabbagetown. I'm the 5th generation from Cabbagetown. So we have some pretty deep roots, my family does, in this area. And I'm very vested in what happens in this community. And I'm very excited about this particular project personally. I also work in green space and park planning professionally. I work for a national nonprofit, the Conservation Fund, that works with the Nature Conservancy on lots of projects all across the country, including here in Georgia. So I'm really excited that the Nature Conservancy is helping to lead some work here in the South River in my own neighborhood, and excited to work with them on this project. And with Ryan as well, we've been working with him on the Finding the Flint project, and on Lake Charlotte, the Conservation Fund helped to acquire that. So very, very interested in green space planning for this community, both personally and professionally. I've been working with a group of kind of ragtag neighbors over the last couple years on the idea of the South River Forest vision. We had originally been focused more on the Entrenchment Creek Park, and I'm sure many folks know about the land swap issues there. But we really, while we were very interested in protecting that piece of the Entrenchment Creek, instead of continuing to find things to fight and divide our community, we're really interested in getting behind the larger vision of the South River Forest as a way to give the community something to latch on to be in support of, instead of to be constantly battling against. So that we think this is a vision everyone could get involved with. I did want to just quickly, I don't know if I can share screen. I just wanted to share the website. One of our resident worker bees has done a tremendous job this week, Margaret, to get our website finally up and running. So if you want to learn more about the South River Forest Coalition, which has really been started by a group of neighbors, you can go to southriverforest.org. There's an opportunity here to subscribe. I can't promise yet that we're going to be right on top of sending you an email, because we are a small little band of neighbors who are trying to get all of these groups working together, not only residents, but large organizations like the Nature Conservancy, smaller local, really important grassroots groups like the South River Watershed Alliance, Eco Addendum, local businesses, local neighborhood groups, ECA, SAND, all of the different groups who are interested in our community. We would like them all to join the coalition. So the idea of the South River Forest Coalition is a big umbrella where everyone can plug in to how they can help support this. As Ryan described, there's lots of opportunities when we're talking about a potential 3,500 acre area. But in addition to opportunities for, for recreational space, outdoor green space, there are all sorts of opportunities for workforce training, for environmental education, for community capacity building. I know the Nature Conservancy has already been working with the communities over in Thomasville Heights, doing some workforce training programs with some of the residents there. So this vision offers a real opportunity for all sorts of development and sustainable growth for our community in ways that are equitable and inclusive, and that think about the legacy residents who have been here for a long time, as well as the community members that are moving in. So I just encourage everyone to be involved, to learn more. I will say, when you go to this website, you may see a slightly different looking map than what Ryan showed you earlier. The community has really taken hold to this idea that the Nature Conservancy and Ryan first uplifted, and has gotten so excited that we've started to add to that vision. So, adding different pieces like better capturing both sides of the neighborhood for the South River Gardens, or there's some community members supporting a project up in Skyhaven. So expanding the boundary a little to do that. So the goal is, how do we take the vision that was started, go through a really robust community planning process, and come out on the other side with a vision that's encompassing of all the things we want to see for our community. So if that sounds like something you'd want to jump on board with, and you have some skill sets to share, I encourage you to join to learn a little bit more about the coalition. If you think you're good at social media or outreach or hosting tours, like, you have a skill set that we can put to work. So I encourage you to join up with your neighbors and to advocate for your community if what you want to see is a sustainable vision for our area. So please reach out to any of us to learn more. And I thank everyone for coming and spending their afternoon learning more about this vision. And thanks to Darren and LA and Ryan and all for organizing the opportunity to share this out. Thank you.
I always get excited when the community can see themselves in the vision. So that's just exciting to hear they're adding all over the place. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Darren Davis, because I'm sure, like me, you're getting really excited about this vision that we've shared, and you want to know, what can you do?
Thank you, LA, Ryan, Shannon. and especially to you all who took time out of your day to be with us this afternoon. As you can tell, there is a high degree of enthusiasm for this big dream, this big vision that we have begun discussing. And most importantly, I want to share that the Nature Conservancy is fully committed to this project for a handful of reasons that I want to explicitly state. One of those reasons is when you look at the water quality of this particular part of our state and how that water flows downstream into other river systems in the state, this is some of the worst water quality there is. One way to help protect that water quality is not to make development around the South River any more intensive than it already is. And so avoided deforestation, recognizing the value that the forest has, not only in protecting the water, but also certainly the air quality of that area, is a key interest of ours. What we also see, though, and what is very exciting, is it would provide an opportunity to provide people who live in an increasingly developing area a chance to really get outdoors and connect with nature. And from the very local community standpoint, we want to be sure that it provides and can be seen as providing very specific economic opportunities that represent the interest of that local community. So there is entirely too much work to do here, and we are thrilled that there are people like the South River Forest Coalition and increasingly many, many others who want to get involved. Our role specifically, as we think about it at the Nature Conservancy, got a handful of things that we're trying to partner with the community on. One, we want to continue planning. Obviously, a vision is nothing more than a beautiful picture. To realize that vision, you have to plan at a variety of scales and at a variety of levels, and you have to attract a lot of people, including certainly decision makers for both government entities, the city of Atlanta and DeKalb County, but also, quite frankly, the private funding community, the philanthropic community, in order to realize this vision. We're communicating, as we are here today, trying to get people excited about it. We're also, though, advocating. And in a second, I'm going to talk to you very specifically about how you can join us in some of that advocacy. And when the time is right, we will do as the Conservation Fund did with Lake Charlotte. We will also acquire land that we see as being critical to this overall vision. So we have a number of important roles to play, but what I want to talk to you this afternoon is how you can join us in being an advocate, a supporter for this work right now. So next slide, please. First and foremost, it's a lot to know, and we've only just begun to scratch the surface, but I would encourage you to go to the Nature Conservancy's website to learn more, as well as the Atlanta City Design website to learn more about what we see as the potential for this area. I would also encourage you to get engaged with the City Council Finance Committee. Why would you do that? Well, it's because as we speak, the Atlanta Prison Farm is under very serious consideration to be developed at least to the tune of 150 acres, perhaps more, by the Atlanta Police Foundation as a public safety training center. We believe that that runs very much counter to the Atlanta City Design, and as a location is not the best location for that public safety training center, and that that land would be much higher and better used as a public green space amenity. So last night they had a meeting. At that meeting, there were something on the order of 125, 150 public comments, all very much against the idea of building the public safety training center at the prison farm. As a result, the Finance Committee did agree coming out of that meeting that they would hold the vote until August, and that in holding that vote, they would be working to collect community input in partnership with the Atlanta Regional Commission over the next 60 days. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You can demonstrate very quickly your support for not only the South River Forest vision, but specifically the future use of the prison farm by taking a petition or participating in a petition. That's something that when we meet with local elected officials, it allows us to say very clearly, here are X number of DeKalb residents or Y number of Atlanta residents who have said they would prefer to see the prison farm used differently than a public safety training center. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, you can join the South River Forest Coalition. The link, the website that you were just given is definitely the best place to go, southriverforest.org. The link here that we can also share out is a link specifically to a questionnaire that lets you say in more detail how you might like to be involved with the South River Forest Coalition. Next slide. As you think about who these people are that will be making a very important decision in August, know that these are the names of the Finance Committee members, their email addresses, and the general phone number that will get you directly into them. I do encourage you to reach out and let them know your thoughts, because ultimately, if it moves out of the Finance Committee with a recommendation to the full council, it is highly likely to be approved that the land would be leased from the City of Atlanta to the Atlanta Police Foundation. The terms of that lease right now are 50 years. So immediately you're in a position where the potential for access is going to be difficult and challenging. Now, what I would say finally with regard to the process that has been imagined over the next 60 days, if you are interested in making sure that you receive notifications about how you can become involved in that ARC-led planning process, you can drop your email into the chat and we will collect that email address. We will follow up with you as we have more details. Right now, I am working with the head of the Atlanta Police Foundation with a goal of providing input into how that 60-day process is going to be designed. And we'll see how that goes, but I certainly hope that I can have some influence over the way that community voice is brought into that process. And we will certainly keep you posted as we understand what those future meetings are. That was a lot, and we've got time now for some Q&A, so I will kick it back to our friend Ellie Allen.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. I did just want to go ahead and show that, again, you can record a public comment if you really want to get your voice out there for the August 10th meeting. The more that they hear from us that this is something that's important, the better our odds are of success. So before we go, no, I am going to go ahead and go into Q&A. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I guess the first question, and if you've got others, go ahead and put them in the chat. But I guess the first question that is coming up is really around that level of involvement and how to get involved. So really, what is TNC currently committed to doing towards this work, beyond the the possibility of buying land or anything else? How is TNC really looking to bring this vision to fruition?
Let me start just with a little history. One way that we knew that we wanted to bring this vision to fruition was to get the very visionary and very talented Ryan Gravel working with us under contract. So once we saw the Atlanta City design and we recognized there was potential here, we immediately reached out to Ryan and brought him on board. And he continues to be a critical part of the consulting team. And as far as I'm concerned, will be forever. So making sure that we have access to that vision, someone who's had great success with the Beltline, is one thing that we want to continue to make happen. We've begun some really important conversations with the community. There are so many more conversations to have with the community, but we've begun some sharing these ideas, listening to them. That is a commitment we will continue to make. There will be a real commitment to listening, especially to the residents who live within the geography as defined by the South River Forest map. Doesn't mean we won't listen to others, but we will especially listen to those folks in making sure that we understand and represent their interests. We will be actively advocating with the City of Atlanta and DeKalb County. We're doing that now, specific to the Atlanta Prison Farm. But we are also going to continue that effort, trying to find ways for them to make very specific financial commitments to particular properties, to agree to, in some cases, purchase properties, in other cases, to repurpose properties, and to ultimately create a shared management agreement between the city and the county for those lands to be maintained in perpetuity. This is heavy lifting, so I don't pretend like it's going to be easy, But when you make a commitment, much as we did in the Altamaha River, where we made a commitment and it's been ongoing for 30 years, the commitment is that continuity of purpose so that you get to the results you seek. And results here are community members who are having the economic and other benefits associated with a protected green space. I will pause because that's a fair amount right there, but those are some examples of how we're committed.
Wonderful. And one of the questions that's come through is, we've talked how important community voice is. Is it more important for the city council to hear from DeKalb County or Fulton County residents, or does the county of residents really even matter?
I would say it does matter, but let me put a fine point on that. The city council, especially that finance committee, are the critical decision makers in the next step with regard to the prison farm. So let me focus there first. In that case, they listen to their constituents. So if you are a City of Atlanta resident and you have a particular council member that represents you, that council member will appreciate hearing from you because you are a voter for them. With regard to DeKalb, I would say that the most important people that I believe have a huge vested and yet unspoken interest, for the exception of Shannon and her colleague Margaret, who are on the phone this afternoon, they don't have much of a voice in this process right now because of the way that it's been constructed and considered by the city. So really trying to get those South DeKalb, Southwest DeKalb residents energized, engaged, and involved, that's going to be important. At the end of the day, though, looking at the broader vision, and I do not exaggerate when I say this, we need everybody and their grandmother, because when you're looking at a 3,500 acre park inside the city, multi-jurisdictional, the number of issues to consider, the number of benefits to consider, and the amount of money to consider is tremendous. And so if we want to bring it to life, we need everybody to acknowledge that there is something in it for them and to be able to see themselves and commit to it. So it is a much broader constituency when you look beyond just the Atlanta prison farm issue.
LA, if I can add too, as a resident on the unincorporated side, I think it's also important for residents of unincorporated DeKalb who are not represented on council to reach out to council and clearly express that. I feel like most of the local representatives are very much interested in issues around inequity. And I mean, this is literally this is something happening in this community with no representation. This neighborhood is greatly impacted by decisions made by mayor and council, yet have no voice in that process. And in fact, we spoke to Commissioner Ted Terry recently, who let us know not only do unincorporated DeKalb residents have no voice in mayor, but because this is a municipal government, the city of Atlanta, who owns this property in unincorporated DeKalb, the city can bypass all zoning requirements. So right now, this property is not zoned properly, but because it's City of Atlanta that owns it, they don't even have to go through a rezoning process, which is the only place DeKalb County would have any teeth to be able to do something as far as from the county's leadership. And so for several reasons, this is just a very inequitable process that is bypassing not only the county's zoning, but the city of Atlanta should be using their own Atlanta community playbook that they have for community engagement, because this is outside their municipal boundary, apparently that's not applying to their own processes. So that municipal divide is actually really critically important in this instance. And I know it's really hard sometimes for even the regular resident to grasp. I know sometimes my neighbors don't know whether or not they live inside or outside the city of Atlanta. So it's a challenge for many reasons, but that is really critically important that they hear from unincorporated DeKalb residents who don't have a voice.
Thanks so much for that reminder, Sharon. All right, so we are coming to the close of our webinar for the day, but before you go, if you haven't dropped that email in the chat, if you want us to follow up with you on the ARC process, please go ahead and do so. That email will only be seen by panelists, so you're not like broadcasting your email address to everybody in the world, and we will hold that sacred. But yeah, absolutely. Shannon, can you just tell us one more time what that website is if we're interested in joining that coalition?
southriverforest.org. We tried to make it as simple and clean and easy as possible for you.
Lovely. And again, just I'll leave it open to drop those email addresses in there. But other than that, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful time talking with all of you. And we hope to see you as this engagement continues.
Thank you, LA. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Ryan. Thanks, everybody.
Have a great day. Bye.